My daughter sent me a message saying she thought it was best if I skipped Thanksgiving after discussing plans with her mother-in-law. The words sat on my screen like a verdict I never got to defend myself from. For a long moment, I could not move. My thumb hovered above the phone. I stared at the message, unsure whether to respond or put the phone down. Then I felt my chest tighten the way it always did when I knew silence would hurt me, but speaking would hurt my daughter. I put the phone down. My name is Ilara Whitcomb. I am 60. My daughter, Miriam, has never known the full version of me. She knows the mother who packed lunches, worked late, kept her head down, and tried to avoid giving anyone more trouble than necessary. She does not know the woman who signs off on division budgets, votes in board meetings, and holds enough shares in Gold Leaf Urban Development to shift the direction of an entire project. She especially does not know that the woman who convinced her I was awkward and socially difficult has worked under me for years without realizing it. Judith Calder, her mother-in-law, a senior department head with 2 decades of influence and the certainty that she understands everyone better than they understand themselves. I read the message again, slower this time. Do not come to Thanksgiving. She thinks you make things uncomfortable. The part that hurt was not the order. It was how easily my daughter accepted it. I set the phone aside and returned to the reports on my desk. Trying to anchor myself in the numbers I understood better than the emotions I kept losing control of. Somewhere deep inside, something shifted. Not anger, something quieter, older. The next morning would bring Judith into my office, and everything she thought she controlled would begin to slip. I arrived at the office before sunrise, the same way I had for more than 20 years. My assistant, Carla, glanced up as I stepped inside. "You are early again," she said softly. I needed the quiet. I answered, placing my bag down. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. A folder rested at the edge of my desk, marked with a yellow tab. Shareholder Review Q4. I flipped it open. Numbers, projections, and vote allocations filled the pages. A language I understood far better than the message Miriam had sent the day before. Carla lingered in the doorway. "The board wants confirmation on the Riverside bid. They need your vote by noon. I will send it," I said. "Thank you." To the rest of the world, I was one of the major shareholders of Gold Leaf Urban Development, a company that shaped entire corners of Charlotte. My signature-approved budgets worth tens of millions. My vote could stall or move an entire district redevelopment plan, but to my family, I was still mom who does real estate paperwork. They had never asked for more, and I had never offered. A soft knock sounded. My colleague Mark stepped in, balancing a stack of proposals. Judith Calder's department sent their final numbers. He said, "She wants to present directly to a shareholder, preferably today." I lifted my eyes. She requested that, yes, she said she wants to impress whoever holds the largest influence on the expansion budget. My chest tightened with something like irony. "Set it for tomorrow morning," I said. "I want to see her presentation." Mark nodded and left. Judith Calder had worked in this company for more than 22 years and never once realized she reported up to me. That was how carefully I had curated my quiet life. By noon, I cast my vote for the Riverside bid, beginning the official approval process that would continue over the next several days. Judith would walk into my office tomorrow, and the version of me she thought she understood would not survive the meeting. Miriam called just after noon. Her voice was tight, as if she had been rehearsing. "Mom, about yesterday. I did not mean to hurt you. I know what you meant," I said quietly. There was a pause before she continued. "Judith says you sometimes make people uncomfortable. She thinks you do not notice how you come across." That was her mother-in-law's favorite line. Unrefined, too blunt, not the right fit. I had heard versions of it for years, spoken with the polished cruelty of someone who believed her own standards were the only ones that mattered. "Miriam," I said. Did you ever ask me what really happens at my job? She hesitated. Judith says you do simple real estate files. She said you like it that way. I see. My chest tightened. Not from anger, but from the reminder of how long I had allowed others to define me for her. She just wants things to go smoothly, Miriam added. That is all? Smoothly. Even if that meant shrinking me until I barely existed at her table. I understand. I said, we will talk more soon. When the call ended, I sat still for a long moment. 3 women, 3 versions of the truth, Judith's certainty, Miriam's confusion, and my silence stretched thin over decades. By morning, all 3 would collide in one room. Judith arrived 5 minutes early, heels striking with the confidence of someone who had spent more than 2 decades telling people where to stand and how to speak. I watched from my chair at the head of the long table as she handed her folder to Carla without looking up. I was told the stakeholder overseeing the expansion would meet me directly. She said, I prefer discussing these matters with the person who actually holds influence. Carla nodded toward me. Ms. Whitcomb will see you now. Judith turned, expecting another middle-aged executive in a tailored suit. The moment her eyes reached my face, her expression shattered surprise first, then confusion, then something very close to fear. Ilara. Her voice thinned. What? What are you doing here? I am conducting the shareholder review, I said gently. Please have a seat. She did not move. There must be a mistake. I was told the primary decision-maker is present. I finished. Her breath caught. You are the major shareholder assigned to this review for several years now. The folder in her hand trembled. Judith attempted a smile, brittle at the edges. Well, this is unexpected. For you, I replied. Not for me. She finally sank into the chair opposite mine. Posture stiff. Had I known you were involved at this level, I would have prepared differently. I prefer to see genuine work. I said, not a tailored performance. Her throat tightened. She opened her folder, flipping pages too quickly. My department requires additional funding for the Riverbend expansion. The projections show Judith. I interrupted softly. Look at me. She froze again. For 22 years. You have spoken about me as if you knew everything, I said, but you never knew where I sat or what I oversaw. Her mouth opened and closed without sound. I continued, calm but unmoving. We will review your numbers. We will discuss your budget. And we will treat this like any other proposal brought before a shareholder. Judith swallowed hard. Of course. As she began presenting, her voice trembled every time she said my name. She had spent years diminishing me. Now, faced with the truth of who I was, she could not look me in the eye. Judith's presentation collapsed after the first 10 minutes. The numbers were inflated, the charts inconsistent, and her voice kept catching on words she usually sharpened like knives. When she finally stopped speaking, the silence between us felt heavier than any budget report on the table. I closed the folder. Judith, these projections do not match the quarterly reports. Her jaw tightened. There were delays. My team needed more time. Delays are not the issue, I said. These are compliance gaps. Her face drained of color. Ilara, please. You do not understand what is happening inside my department. Then explain it. Judith looked around the room as if checking for exits, then leaned in and lowered her voice. If a full audit happens, I could lose everything. I have given more than 22 years to this company. This department is my life. I kept my tone steady. Why is an audit your greatest fear? Her eyes dropped. Because the numbers will not hold. We had employee turnover. Poor supervision. I tried to fix it quietly. She swallowed hard. I did not want the board thinking I am slipping. For how long has this been happening? I asked. A few years, she whispered. Long enough that the wrong scrutiny would end my career. The truth finally surfaced, trembling and imperfect. She admitted she guided Miriam's understanding of corporate processes, not anticipating how her words would be interpreted at home. I held her gaze. But you did. Judith's voice cracked. I told her you did not understand corporate etiquette. I told her you were uncomfortable at large gatherings. I said whatever kept you from looking too closely at my work. My breath caught not in shock, but in recognition. The pieces clicked together with painful simplicity. She lifted her eyes, filled with something fragile. I was afraid you would expose me without even realizing it. I thought keeping you away was safer. For you. I said, yes. Her composure finally broke. For me. I sat back, letting the truth settle. Judith's pride had always looked like steel. Now it looked like fear wrapped in desperation. Her secret lay open on the table, along with the choice of what I would do with it. Miriam arrived at my house just after sunset. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes shifting the way they used to when she was a child caught between truth and fear. Mom, she said quietly, Judith told me you embarrassed her at work. I stepped aside. Come in. We should talk without anyone else's voice in your ear. She hesitated, then walked in. I motioned for her to sit at the kitchen table, the same table where I had helped her with homework, patched school projects, and listened to her fears. Tonight, she looked older than her 38 years, tired, conflicted. Judith said you interrupted her presentation, Miriam continued. She said you tried to undermine her. I kept my voice even. Miriam, I did not interrupt anything. I was the one she was presenting to. Her eyebrows pulled together. Presenting to you why? Because I am a major shareholder at Goldleaf. I said, I have been for years. Miriam stared at me, stunned. You, what? You never said. You never asked. I replied softly. You believed the version of me Judith built, the one who works with simple files, the one who does not belong at large gatherings, the one who should stay quiet. She blinked hard, fighting emotion. She told me you would embarrass us. She said you did not understand how things worked. Judith has her own reasons. I said, she has been hiding issues in her department for years. My involvement threatened that. Miriam covered her mouth, shocked. She used me. She influenced you. I corrected gently. But you let her words matter more than mine. Tears gathered in her eyes. I did not know. I swear I did not know. I believe you, I said, reaching across the table. For the first time in a long time. She took my hand. The bridge between us had never been whole. But tonight, for the first time, she seemed willing to rebuild it piece by fragile piece. The next morning, I called a meeting with the internal compliance team. No raised voices, no explanations, just a simple directive. I want a full audit of every senior department. I said, no exceptions. Begin today. The director of compliance, Harold, blinked. It's unusual to audit all departments at once, but gaps in reporting prompted immediate review. It needs to happen now. He studied my face, then nodded. We will start with Judith Calder's division. Her reports have shown inconsistencies for several quarters. Judith walked in just as he left. She froze when she saw me. Ilara, she said, breath uneven. I heard you ordered a review. I ordered an audit. I corrected. Across the entire company. Her voice cracked. You know my department is not ready for that level of scrutiny. That is precisely why it needs to happen. She grasped the back of a chair, knuckles white. If they find gaps, I could lose my position. I warned you yesterday, I said. I am following policy. Her composure slipped. You are doing this because you are angry about Thanksgiving. About Miriam. This is not revenge, I replied. This is accountability. She opened her mouth, then closed it. As the first wave of auditors entered the room, panic flickered in her eyes. For the first time, she looked small, like the fear she had used to control others had finally circled back to her. Throughout the afternoon, teams moved through her division, pulling files, interviewing staff, comparing past budgets with actual expenditures. Rumors traveled fast. By 3 o'clock, everyone in Goldleaf knew something significant was unfolding. Later that day, the chief operations officer stopped by my office. The audit was overdue. He said, "Thank you for initiating it. It shows strong leadership." I nodded. But inside, I felt the weight of what would come next. Judith had spent years hiding cracks behind authority. Now every fracture would be exposed. Miriam picked me up just after noon on Thanksgiving Day. She stepped out of the car before I could reach the driveway, arms wrapped around herself the way she used to when she was afraid of disappointing me. "Mom," she said softly, "you are coming with me. You belong at the table." I searched her face. There was no hesitation this time, only resolve. "All right," I said. "I am with you." When we walked into her home, conversation in the living room faltered. Aunts, cousins, family friends. They all paused the moment they saw me. Judith stood near the kitchen archway, clutching a dish towel. She looked nothing like the woman who once commanded entire rooms with her certainty. Her eyes were rimmed red, shoulders drawn tight, voice barely above a whisper when she said, "Elara." "Judith?" I replied evenly. No one moved. The tension hummed underneath every breath. Miriam stepped forward. "My mother is sitting next to me," she announced, her voice steady. This year, and every year, several relatives glanced at Judith. She forced a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Of course," she murmured. "Family should be together, at the table." I took my seat beside Miriam, across from us. Judith lowered herself slowly, as though the chair might collapse beneath her. Dinner began in a strained silence. Forks scraped softly against plates. Someone attempted small talk, but it fell flat. Halfway through the meal, an aunt glanced at Judith nervously. "I heard your department had some review this week." Judith stiffened. "Just routine evaluations." Miriam set down her fork. "It was an audit," she said, "and my mother initiated it because it was necessary." Eyes turned toward me. Judith's lip trembled a fraction. I kept my tone calm. Goldleaf needed transparency. "Every department was reviewed," another relative whispered. "That must have been difficult." "For some," Miriam replied quietly, "but not for the people doing the right thing." Judith flinched. I looked at my daughter. In her face, I saw clarity I had been waiting years to witness. She had chosen her truth, and she had chosen me. For the first time in a long while, the seat beneath me felt solid, not borrowed, not conditional, mine. The truth had finally taken its place at the table, and everyone could feel the shift beginning. The audit results were released on a quiet Tuesday morning. Harold from compliance stopped by my office with a single folder in his hands. "It is official," he said. "Judith will be reassigned to a reduced oversight role, no termination. But her authority will be limited." I nodded. "Thank you, Harold." He left, and a long, steady breath escaped me. No victory, no satisfaction. Just the stillness that comes after truth finally lands where it needs to. Later that afternoon, I walked to the small conference room where Judith waited. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Hands folded tightly, gaze fixed on the table. "Elara," she said quietly, lifting her eyes. "I suppose you know." "I do," she inhaled shakily. "I never wanted it to end like this." "I know," I replied. "And I did not want our families damaged because we could not be honest." She swallowed. I thought if Miriam leaned on me, it would protect her from disappointment. I never saw how much I was hurting her. And you saw what you were afraid to lose, I said gently. And fear makes people do complicated things. A tear slipped down her cheek. She did not wipe it away. Are you satisfied now? No, I said, but I am clear, and so are you. For the first time, Judith nodded without argument. We sat in silence, not as rivals, not as threats, but as two women finally forced to see each other without the armor. Miriam came by the next evening without calling ahead. She stepped into my living room with a nervous smile, the kind she used to give me before school plays when she needed reassurance. Mom, she said softly, I want to start over. I want to actually know you this time. I set down the folder in my hands. You already know me, not the real you, she said. Not the woman who sits on board committees or votes on multi-million-dollar projects. Judith made me believe you lived a small life, but you never did. I hesitated, then admitted, I hid parts of my life because I did not want to intimidate you. Miriam shook her head quickly. I do not want that anymore. I want honesty. I want you. Her voice cracked on the last word. I reached out and pulled her into my arms. For the first time in many years, she held on without pulling away. She stayed for dinner, simple pasta. Nothing special, and we talked without the weight of misunderstanding pressing between us. She asked about my work, my decisions, my role at Goldleaf. I answered openly, letting her into rooms I had always kept shut. You deserve this version of me, I said quietly. She squeezed my hand. I always did. I just did not know how to see her. Later that night, after she left, I stood by the window overlooking the Charlotte skyline. Towers lit the horizon, steady and certain, the way I finally felt inside my own life. For 60 years, I had learned to take up as little space as possible. Now, I was done shrinking. If you felt this moment with me, take a second to like, comment, or subscribe so more people can follow stories like this one. Miriam and I were finally rebuilding on truth, and for the first time, the future felt wide open.